Hello everyone. I'm Olivia, reporting for the Dog Shampoo Network. Here are 11 signs indicating you're the victim of narcissistic abuse. 1. You experience dissociation as a survival mechanism. You feel emotionally or even physically detached from your environment, experiencing disruptions in your memory, perceptions, consciousness and sense of self. As Dr. Van der Kolk, 2015, writes in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, dissociation is the essence of trauma. The overwhelming experience is split off and fragmented, so that the emotions, sounds, images, thoughts and physical sensations take on a life of their own. Dissociation can lead to emotional numbing in the face of horrific circumstances. Mind-numbing activities, obsessions, addictions and repression may become a way of life because they give you an escape from your current reality. Your brain finds ways to emotionally block out the impact of your pain, so you do not have to deal with the full terror of your circumstances. You may also develop traumatized inner parts that become disjointed from the personality you inhabit with your abuser or loved ones. These inner parts can include the inner child parts that were never nurtured, the true anger and disgust you feel towards your abuser, or parts of yourselves you feel you cannot express around them. According to therapist Rev. Sherry Heller, 2015, integrating and reclaiming dissociated and disowned aspects of the personality is largely dependent on constructing a cohesive narrative, which allows for the assimilation of emotional, cognitive, and physiological realities. This inner integration is best done with the help of a trauma-informed therapist. 2. You walk on eggshells. A common symptom of trauma is avoiding anything that represents reliving the trauma, whether it be people, places or activities that pose a threat. Whether it be your friend, your partner, your family member, co-worker or boss, you find yourself constantly watching what you say or do around this person lest you incur their wrath, punishment or become the object of their envy. However, you find that this does not work and you still become the abuser's target whenever he or she feels entitled to use you as an emotional punching bag. You become perpetually anxious about provoking your abuser in any way and may avoid confrontation or setting boundaries as a result. You may also extend your people-pleasing behavior outside of the abusive relationship, losing your ability to be spontaneous or assertive while navigating the outside world, especially with people who resemble or are associated with your abuser and the abuse. 3. You put aside your basic needs and desires, sacrificing your emotional and even your physical safety to please the abuser. You may have once been full of life, goal-driven and dream-oriented. Now you feel as if you are living just to fulfill the needs and agendas of another person. Once, the narcissist's entire life seemed to revolve around you. Now your entire life revolves around them. You may have placed your goals, hobbies, friendships and personal safety on the back burner just to ensure that your abuser feels satisfied in the relationship. Of course, you soon realize that he or she will never truly be satisfied regardless of what you do or don't do. 4. You are struggling with health issues and somatic symptoms that represent your psychological turmoil. You may have gained or lost a significant amount of weight, developed serious health issues that did not exist prior, and experienced physical symptoms of premature aging. The stress of chronic abuse has sent your cortisol levels into overdrive, and your immune system has taken a severe hit, leaving you vulnerable to physical ailments and disease. You find yourself unable to sleep or are experiencing terrifying nightmares when you do, reliving the trauma through emotional or visual flashbacks that bring you back to the site of the original wounds. 5. You develop a pervasive sense of mistrust. Every person now represents a threat, and you find yourself becoming anxious about the intentions of others, especially having experienced the malicious actions of someone you once trusted. Your usual caution becomes hypervigilance. Since the narcissistic abuser has worked hard to gaslight you into believing that your experiences are invalid, you have a hard time trusting anyone, including yourself. 6. You experience suicidal ideation or self-harming tendencies. Along with depression and anxiety may come an increased sense of hopelessness. Your circumstances feel unbearable, as if you cannot escape, even if you wanted to. You develop a sense of learned helplessness that makes you feel as if you don't wish to survive another day. You may even engage in self-harm as a way to cope. As Dr. McGill, chief of the Suicide Prevention Branch at SAMHSA notes, victims of intimate partner violence are twice as likely to attempt suicide multiple times. This is the way abusers essentially commit murder without a trace. 7. You self-isolate. Many abusers isolate their victims, but victims also isolate themselves because they feel ashamed about the abuse they're experiencing. Given the victim blaming and misconceptions about emotional and psychological violence in society, victims may even be re-traumatized by law enforcement, family members, friends and the harem members of the narcissist, who might invalidate their perceptions of the abuse. They fear no one will understand or believe them, so instead of reaching out for help, they decide to withdraw from others as a way to avoid judgment and retaliation from their abuser. 8. You find yourself comparing yourself to others, often to the extent of blaming yourself for the abuse. A narcissistic abuser is highly skilled at manufacturing love triangles, or bringing another person into the dynamic of the relationship, to further terrorize the victim. As a result, victims of narcissistic abuse internalize the fear that they are not enough, and may constantly strive to compete for the abuser's attention and approval. Victims may also compare themselves to others in happier, healthier relationships, or find themselves wondering why their abuser appears to treat complete strangers with more respect. This can send them down the trapdoor of wondering, why me? And stuck in an abyss of self-blame. The truth is, the abuser is the person who should be blamed. You are in no way responsible for being abused. 9. You self-sabotage and self-destruct. Victims often find themselves ruminating over the abuse, and hearing the abuser's voice in their minds, amplifying their negative self-talk and tendency towards self-sabotage. Malignant narcissists program and condition their victims to self-destruct, sometimes even to the point of driving them to suicide. Due to the narcissist's covert and overt put-downs, verbal abuse and hypercriticism, victims develop a tendency to punish themselves, because they carry such toxic shame. They may sabotage their goals, dreams and academic pursuits. The abuser has instilled in them a sense of worthlessness, and they begin to believe that they are undeserving of good things. 10. You fear doing what you love, and achieving success. Since many pathological predators are envious of their victims, they punish them for succeeding. This conditions their victims to associate their joys, interests, talents and areas of success with cruel and callous treatment. This conditioning gets their victims to fear success lest they be met with reprisal and reprimand. As a result, victims become depressed, anxious, lack confidence, and they may hide from the spotlight and allow their abusers to steal the show again and again. Realize that your abuser is not undercutting your gifts because they truly believe you are inferior. It is because those gifts threaten their control over you. 11. You protect your abuser and even gaslight yourself. Rationalizing, minimizing and denying the abuse are often survival mechanisms for victims in an abusive relationship. In order to reduce the cognitive dissonance that erupts when the person who claims to love you mistreats you, victims of abuse convince themselves that the abuser is really not all that bad, or that they must have done something to provoke the abuse. It is important to reduce this cognitive dissonance in the other direction by reading up on the narcissistic personality and abuse tactics. This way, you are able to reconcile your current reality with the narcissist's false self by recognizing that the abusive personality, not the charming facade, is their true self. Remember that an intense trauma bond is often formed between victim and abuser because the victim is trained to rely on the abuser for his or her survival. Victims may protect their abusers from legal consequences, portray a happy image of the relationship on social media, or even overcompensate by sharing the blame of the abuse. So there you have it. Make sure to take good care of yourself. Bye for now.